The Silent Declaration. Dr. Naomi Winters stood at the observation deck of the Terran diplomatic vessel Horizon, watching the crystalline spires of the Viridian Council headquarters shimmer against the backdrop of twin purple suns. After 15 years of studying xenobiology in alien cultures, she still found herself amazed by the grandeur of it all. But today, that wonder was tempered by a cold fury that settled in her chest like ancient ice. "Doctor, they're ready for us," Lieutenant Hassan whispered, his normally steady voice carrying a hint of tension. The young officer had served as her aide for the past 3 years, long enough to read the subtle signs of her anger in the rigid set of her shoulders. Naomi nodded, smoothing down her formal diplomatic uniform. "Then let's not keep the esteemed council waiting." The words carried a bite that made Hassan wince. The council chamber itself was a marvel of alien architecture, a vast amphitheater carved from living crystal that hummed with barely contained energy. 17 representatives of the most powerful spacefaring races sat in tiered rows, their varied forms a testament to the diversity of life in the galaxy. At the center, first speaker Ixil's bioluminescent form pulsed with what Naomi had learned to recognize as impatience. "Dr. Winters," Ixil's telepathic voice resonated through the chamber. "The Council has reviewed Earth's petition regarding the Arcturus incident. We find insufficient evidence to warrant intervention." Naomi's hand tightened on the data crystal she carried. Insufficient evidence? She kept her voice level, professional, even as rage burned behind her eyes. "We provided sensor logs, genetic samples, and survivor testimonies. The Kraken Consortium used banned quantum phage weapons on a civilian research station. 3,000 people died in agony. The consortium claims they were responding to human aggression," interrupted Delegate Voss, his chitinous mandibles clicking. "They assert your research station was developing military technology." "They claim a lot of things," Naomi countered, activating the holographic display. "But data doesn't lie." The chamber filled with images, twisted corridors where flesh had melted from bone, children's toys floating in zero-G amid clouds of frozen blood, final transmissions from scientists trying to protect their families. "This is distressing," first speaker Ixil admitted, his luminescence dimming slightly. "But the consortium holds significant influence in 3 major trade sectors. Any action against them would destabilize politics." Naomi's laugh held no humor. 3,000 lives reduced to a political inconvenience. "Tell me, first speaker, how many humans have to die before it becomes worth your attention?" "Dr. Winters." Delegate Voss rose from his seat, mandibles flaring. "You forget your place. Humanity is still a provisional member of this council. Your species has barely mastered faster-than-light travel. Perhaps in a few centuries, when you better understand galactic civilization we understand perfectly." Naomi's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "We understand that this council's power is built on convenience and compromise rather than justice. We understand that you see humans as primitive upstarts who should be grateful for your patronage. But most importantly..." She placed the data crystal on the central podium, watching it pulse with stored information. "We understand that if this council won't act, humanity will." The chamber erupted in protests and threats, but Naomi continued, her voice carrying over the chaos. "This is not a request for permission. This is a courtesy notification. The United Earth Fleet departed Sol System 6 hours ago. They carry with them evidence of the Council's willful negligence in protecting civilian lives. Evidence that will be broadcast to every species in known space." "You wouldn't dare," Voss hissed. "The political ramifications The fleet also carries something else," Naomi interrupted. "Something we've kept hidden since we first achieved space flight. You see, while you dismissed us as primitives, we were watching. Learning. Preparing. Because Earth's history taught us one vital lesson: peace must be protected by strength." First speaker Ixil's form flashed with alarm patterns. What are you saying? I'm saying that in approximately 12 hours, the Kraken Consortium will learn why ancient human cultures depicted our gods of justice carrying swords. Naomi turned to leave, then paused. You've all read our historical records. You know what humans do to those who harm our children. The Consortium crossed a line. Now they'll learn why every spacefaring race should fear that mistake. As she walked out of the chamber, Naomi activated her neural link. Admiral Patel, the Council responded exactly as expected. Proceed with Operation Nemesis. Understood, Doctor, came the calm reply. The fleet is already in position. We'll show them why humanity never needed their permission to dispense justice. Behind her, the council chamber descended into panic as their sensors detected hundreds of human warships emerging from previously unknown stealth fields. Ships that, by all their calculations, humanity shouldn't have been capable of building for another century. The game of pretending to be harmless primitives was over. Now it was time to show the galaxy why Earth's most ancient legends always warned, beware the fury of a patient person. Echoes of defiance. Admiral Raj Patel stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display of the Kraken Consortium's main fortress. 30 years in the United Earth Fleet had taught him patience, but watching the sensor feeds from the Arcturus massacre had awakened something primal in him. Something that demanded retribution. Status report, he commanded, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had earned him the nickname the Silent Storm among his crew. Lieutenant Commander Zara Rodriguez stepped forward, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. All ships in position, Admiral. The Consortium remains unaware of our presence. Their quantum shields are operating at standard capacity. Patel nodded, studying the fortress's defensive grid. The Consortium had built their headquarters into an asteroid the size of Earth's moon, riddling it with tunnels and weapon emplacements. They thought it impregnable. They were about to learn otherwise. Begin transmission, he ordered. The communication officer's fingers danced across her console, and Patel's image appeared on every screen within the Consortium's domain. Attention Kraken Consortium leadership. I am Admiral Raj Patel of the United Earth Fleet. 3 weeks ago, you attacked a civilian research station in the Arcturus sector, using banned quantum phage weapons. You murdered 3,000 innocent people, including 800 children. He paused, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. There will be no demands for surrender. No negotiations. What follows is humanity's response to your barbarism. With a gesture, he cut the transmission. Execute Operation Nemesis, Phase 1. Across the void of space, 50 human vessels suddenly shed their stealth fields. But instead of attacking, they began broadcasting on all frequencies. The signal contained everything: sensor logs from Arcturus, testimonies from survivors, evidence of the Council's willful inaction, and most devastatingly, proof of the Consortium's long history of similar atrocities. Let the galaxy watch, Patel murmured. Let them see what happens when humanity dispenses justice. Sir, Rodriguez reported, we're detecting multiple ships attempting to flee the fortress. The Consortium is trying to evacuate their leadership. As expected. Patel's smile held no warmth. Lieutenant Commander, initiate Phase 2. Throughout the asteroid field, hundreds of seemingly innocent cargo containers suddenly activated. Each one released a swarm of microdrones, a technology humanity had kept hidden for decades. The drones moved like a metallic tide, weaving an impenetrable net around the fortress. Fascinating things, quantum phage weapons, Patel commented, watching the drones take position. The Consortium thought they were so clever, using a weapon that breaks down organic matter at the quantum level. But they never asked themselves, what happens when you reverse the process? The drones began emitting precisely calibrated energy fields, creating a quantum lock around the fortress. No ship could enter or leave without having its very atoms torn apart. Their own weapon, Rodriguez realized, turned against them. Poetic justice, Patel agreed. Now, Phase 3. The human fleet moved with choreographed precision, each ship taking up positions that centuries of space combat doctrine would consider tactically nonsensical. But humanity hadn't spent the last 50 years playing by alien rules. Message from the consortium, the comm officer reported. They're begging for mercy. Patel's expression remained unchanged. Play it on the main screen. The image of High Commander Vex appeared, his crystalline form flickering with terror patterns. Please, the alien leader begged, we didn't know they were children. We thought the station was a military installation. We'll pay reparations, anything you want. Anything we want. Patel's voice carried a chill that made his bridge crew shiver. What we want is to ensure that no one ever again makes the mistake of thinking they can murder human children without consequences. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, demonstrate why we named this operation after the Greek goddess of divine retribution. The human fleet's formation suddenly made sense. Each ship served as a focal point, creating a complex geometric pattern that transformed the quantum lock into something else entirely. The fortress began to glow as its own atomic structure turned against it. A quantum cascade, Rodriguez explained to the horrified consortium leaders. Your fortress will collapse into its component atoms. But don't worry, we've calibrated it to affect only inorganic matter. You'll have about 30 seconds of exposure to space before the end. 30 seconds to contemplate the terror you inflicted on our people. You can't do this. Vex screamed. The Council will never allow dash. The Council, Patel interrupted, is currently watching their carefully maintained power structure crumble as every species in the galaxy learns of their complicity in your crimes. Humanity is done playing by their rules. He turned to his crew, his voice carrying the weight of command. Let this serve as a lesson to the galaxy. Humanity will protect its own. We will answer violence with justice, terror with retribution. And we will never, ever forget. The fortress began to dissolve, its structure unraveling at the quantum level. As the consortium leaders faced their final moments, Admiral Patel's last transmission echoed through their dying fortress, remember this day. Remember that humanity warned you. Remember that you chose this end. As the fortress collapsed into a cloud of component atoms, signals from across the galaxy reported unprecedented upheaval. Species after species demanded answers from the Council, outraged by the evidence of corruption and negligence. The careful balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for millennia was shifting. And at the center of it all, the human fleet hung in space, a silent reminder that the galaxy's newest spacefaring race had been underestimated for the last time. The Quantum Gambit. Commander Diana Torres watched the emergency session of the Galactic Council from her hidden observation post within the crystalline chamber. The past 48 hours had transformed the usually orderly assembly into a chaotic arena of accusations and demands. Species that had coexisted peacefully for millennia now stood on the brink of open conflict. The humans must be sanctioned. Delegate Voss's mandibles clicked furiously. They violated dozens of technological restrictions. Their ships utilized capabilities that should have been impossible for their development level. Diana allowed herself a small smile. The arthropodons had always been the most rigid in their thinking, the most convinced of their own technological superiority. They still hadn't realized that humanity's greatest deception wasn't hiding their advanced technology, it was hiding their capacity for innovation. First speaker Ixil's bioluminescent patterns showed clear distress. We must maintain order. The humans' actions, while extreme, were provoked by dash. By your failure, a new voice cut through the chamber. Diana straightened as Professor Thomas Blackwood strode into view. The renowned quantum physicist had been her mentor at the Terra Defense Institute, and his presence here meant the next phase was beginning. Professor Blackwood, Ixil acknowledged, his patterns shifting to formal recognition. The Council has summoned you to explain humanity's apparent violation of technological development protocols. Thomas smiled, the expression reminiscent of an ancient schoolmaster about to correct a student's fundamental misconception. Actually, first speaker, I'm here to explain why those protocols were based on flawed assumptions about how technology develops. He gestured, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber. You believe that technological advancement follows a linear path. That certain discoveries must precede others in a fixed sequence. But humanity's history taught us something different. The displays showed Earth's technological progression, but arranged in a pattern that made several council members emit sounds of distress. You see, Thomas continued, human innovation doesn't follow predetermined paths. We learn from failure as much as success. We combine seemingly unrelated concepts to create something new. And most importantly, we question everything, even the basic assumptions that your civilization is built upon. Diana activated her neural link, signaling the hidden quantum cores throughout the council station. Right on schedule, Thomas was keeping the council distracted while she implemented the real plan. Impossible. Voss interrupted. Your species barely achieved fusion power a century ago. You cannot have developed quantum manipulation technology already. Why not? Thomas asked mildly. Because it doesn't follow your rules? Rules created by species who stopped questioning their own limitations millennia ago? As if on cue, every display in the chamber flickered. Diana's fingers danced across her neural interface, initiating the quantum overlay network she and her team had spent years secretly installing throughout council space. What's happening? Ixel demanded, his patterns shifting to alarm frequencies. Reality check, Thomas replied. The chamber's own crystalline structure began to hum with new energy as quantum fields previously invisible to council sensors revealed themselves. While you were watching our ships and weapons, counting our resources and measuring our observable technology, humanity was doing what we do best, looking for connections you never imagined possible. Diana couldn't help but grin as her network came online. Across council space, thousands of quantum nodes activated, creating an entirely new layer of reality parallel to normal space. The Council's mighty civilization had built their power on controlling the fundamental forces of the universe, but they had never imagined that those fundamentals could be altered. You see, Thomas explained as panic spread through the chamber, humanity's greatest advantage isn't our technology. It's our perspective. We look at the impossible and ask, why not? We see barriers and wonder what's on the other side. And when the universe tells us something can't be done, we take it as a challenge. Diana's quantum network reached critical mass. Throughout council space, ships suddenly lost power as their engines encountered laws of physics that no longer behaved as expected. Communication systems fell silent as quantum signals followed new paths through subspace. Even the Council's mighty defensive systems stood powerless, their carefully designed protocols useless against laws of reality that had been quietly rewritten. What have you done? Ixel whispered, his luminescence dimming to almost nothing. We've changed the game, Thomas replied. Every quantum engine, every FTL drive, every power core in council space now operates according to protocols we control. We didn't break your rules, we simply wrote new ones. Diana stepped out of her hiding place, joining her mentor in the center of the chamber. For centuries, you treated humanity as children playing with technologies we barely understood. You never realized we were actually learning how the universe works at a level your civilization had forgotten was possible. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just developed advanced technology, they had fundamentally altered the way technology worked throughout known space. Every ship, every station, every quantum-based system now operated only because humans allowed it to. This is your choice, esteemed council, Diana announced, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's accumulated knowledge. Continue as you have, enforcing arbitrary rules and ignoring injustice, and we'll show you just how drastically we can change the laws of physics in your territory. Or work with us to create a truly just galactic society." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Because humanity's greatest secret isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our willingness to remake reality itself when the existing rules no longer serve justice." Breaking point. General Marcus Blackwood stood at the viewport of the UES Avalon, watching the swirling quantum distortions that now permeated Council space. The past week had transformed the galaxy's political landscape as thoroughly as Diana's network had transformed its physical laws. But not everyone had accepted humanity's new role in galactic affairs. "Status report," he commanded, turning to face his command staff. Colonel Raven West, his tactical officer, stepped forward with a grim expression. "The hegemony continues to resist, sir. They've somehow modified their quantum cores to operate on pre-human physical constants. Their fleet is gathering at Nexus Point 7. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. The Arthropodans' hegemony had always been the most militant faction within the Council. Of course they would have contingency plans for quantum-level warfare. But humanity had planned for this too. "They think they've found a way to bypass our quantum alterations," he mused. "Colonel West, what's the status of Operation Paradigm?" "Ready to initiate on your command, sir. Though." She hesitated. "Some of the science team have expressed concerns about the psychological impact." Marcus understood their worry. What they were about to do went beyond merely changing the laws of physics. It would challenge the very way their enemies perceived reality itself. "The hegemony made their choice," he stated firmly. "They've had multiple opportunities to negotiate. Instead, they've been secretly arming rebel factions across 3 sectors, trying to incite a war against Earth. Time to show them why that was a mistake." He activated the ship's quantum comm, connecting to the entire human fleet. "All ships, initiate Operation Paradigm. Phase 1. Across the battlefield, human vessels began emitting carefully calibrated quantum fields. But unlike previous engagements, these fields didn't target enemy ships or weapons. Instead, they began altering the very fabric of spacetime around the hegemony fleet. "Sir," West reported, "enemy fleet is responding exactly as predicted. They're activating their modified quantum drives, attempting to lock into the old physical constants." Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. "And walking right into our trap. Execute Phase 2. The quantum distortions intensified, but in a pattern that the hegemony sensors interpreted as normal space. In reality, their entire fleet was being subtly guided into a bubble of altered spacetime where the very concepts of distance and direction were being rewritten. "Incoming transmission from the hegemony flagship," the comm officer announced. On screen, Marcus ordered. High Commander Voss appeared, his chitinous face contorted with what passed for smugness among his species. "General Blackwood, your quantum tricks won't work on us. We've evolved beyond your primitive manipulations." "Evolved?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "An interesting choice of words, Commander. Tell me, how sure are you about the nature of your own reality right now?" "What nonsense is this?" Voss demanded. But there was a flicker of uncertainty in his compound eyes. "Phase 3, Marcus commanded softly. The bubble of altered spacetime collapsed inward, but not in a way that would destroy the hegemony fleet. Instead, it began changing how their sensors interpreted spatial relationships. Up became sideways, forward became backward, and the very concept of three-dimensional space began to lose meaning. What are you doing?" Voss's voice held the first traces of fear. "Our sensors, nothing makes sense." "We're teaching you a lesson about evolution," Marcus replied calmly. "You see, humanity evolved on a planet that constantly tried to kill us. We learned to adapt not just our bodies or our technology, but our very way of thinking. While you were building bigger guns, we were learning to question the nature of reality itself. On the tactical display, the hegemony fleet began to break formation as their crews struggled to cope with a universe that no longer followed comprehensible rules. Ships fired weapons at enemies that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, tried to retreat in directions that no longer existed, and slowly descended into chaos. "You're insane!" Voss screamed. "This violates every law of physics." "No," Marcus corrected. "It violates every law of physics you understand. Humanity passed that limitation when we realized that the laws themselves were just another tool to be mastered. You thought you could defeat us by operating outside our quantum modifications? We anticipated that. So instead of changing how your ships work, we changed how your crews perceive reality." He leaned forward, his voice carrying absolute conviction. "This is your last warning, Commander. Surrender your fleet and cease all hostile actions against Earth and its allies. Or we'll expand this bubble until your entire civilization forgets how to understand the concept of three-dimensional space." The threat wasn't idle. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment, developing weapons that didn't just destroy bodies or ships, but could fundamentally alter how enemy species perceived and interacted with reality itself. One by one, the hegemony ships began powering down their weapons. Even their modified quantum cores couldn't help them fight in a universe where the basic concepts of space and time no longer followed predictable rules. "A wise choice," Marcus acknowledged as Voss transmitted his surrender. "Colonel West, begin returning local spacetime to normal parameters. Gradually. Let's make sure the lesson sinks in." As the quantum distortions faded, Marcus reflected on humanity's journey. From primitive newcomers to masters of reality itself, all because they never stopped questioning, never stopped pushing boundaries, never accepted that something was impossible just because everyone else said it was. "Send word to Earth Command," he ordered. "The hegemony resistance has been neutralized. The galaxy is finally ready for real change." Dawn of a new order. Ambassador Julian Rhodes walked through the newly reconstructed council chambers, his footsteps echoing off walls that now pulsed with both crystalline energy and quantum resonance. 1 month had passed since the hegemony surrender, and the galaxy was still adjusting to its new reality. Both figuratively and literally. "The delegates are ready, Ambassador," his aide, Dr. Lyra Patel, informed him. Her dark eyes held a mixture of pride and concern. "Though some are still struggling with the concept of collaborative governance." Julian nodded, straightening his diplomatic insignia. "They've spent millennia in a hierarchy based on technological advancement. Learning to work as equals will take time." He entered the chamber, now arranged in a circular pattern rather than the old tiered design that had reinforced species rankings. Representatives from every spacefaring civilization sat together, their various forms illuminated by the soft glow of quantum-stabilized lighting. "Honored representatives," Julian began, his voice carrying easily through the space. "Today marks the first session of the Reformed Galactic Alliance. Before we begin, I'd like to address the questions many of you still have about humanity's role in this new order." First speaker Ixil, now serving as just one voice among equals, raised his luminescent form. "The question, Ambassador Rhodes, is whether Earth intends to rule through force, given your demonstrated ability to rewrite the fundamental laws of our universe." Julian smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "If humanity wanted to rule, we would have simply maintained the quantum alterations and forced compliance. Instead, we're here to propose something unprecedented: true cooperation." He gestured, and the chamber's holographic systems activated, showing images from Earth's history. "What you see as humanity's greatest weapon, our ability to question and reshape reality, is actually our greatest gift. We evolved on a world that taught us to never stop asking why and what if. Now we offer that perspective to the galaxy." The images shifted, showing the new quantum network that connected all of Council space. "This network doesn't just allow us to alter physical laws. It enables instant communication, shared scientific discovery, and collaborative problem-solving on a scale never before possible. But it only works if we all contribute. Ambassador Voss, the hegemony's new representative, clicked his mandibles skeptically. And we're to believe humans will simply share this power? After demonstrating such devastating capabilities? The devastating capabilities, Julian countered, were never about the technology. They were about imagination. About seeing possibilities where others saw only barriers. That's what we're really offering, not just our discoveries, but our way of thinking. He touched a control panel, and the chamber's quantum field shifted subtly. The representatives gasped as they briefly perceived reality the way humans naturally did, full of endless possibilities, unbound by preconceptions about what was or wasn't possible. This is how we see the universe, Julian explained. Not as a fixed set of rules to be followed, but as a canvas of infinite potential. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it with you, to question everything we think we know, to discover wonders that none of us can even imagine yet. Dr. Patel stepped forward, activating another display. We're proposing joint research initiatives, open sharing of scientific discoveries, and collaborative governance structures. Each species contributing their unique perspectives and abilities. Imagine combining arthropodon precision with Centurion insight and human innovation. The chamber hummed with conversation as the implications became clear. Humanity wasn't offering to be the galaxy's rulers or protectors. They were offering to be its teachers, showing other species how to break free from their own mental limitations. There will be guidelines, Julian continued. Basic principles of justice, protection of sentient rights, and collective security. But within those frameworks, we'll work together to reshape reality itself. Not through force, but through shared discovery and mutual growth. He paused, looking at each representative in turn. The choice is yours. Continue viewing the universe as a fixed set of rules to be followed, or join us in asking what might be possible if we dare to question everything we think we know. One by one, the representatives signaled their agreement. Even Voss, after a long moment of internal struggle, clicked his assent. The age of rigid hierarchy and technological restrictions was over. A new era of collaborative exploration and shared discovery was beginning. As the session concluded, Dr. Patel approached Julian with a knowing smile. They still don't fully understand, do they? What humanity's really offering? Julian shook his head. They will. Once they learn to see beyond their own limitations, they'll understand that the real power was never in the technology or the quantum manipulation. It was in the simple human ability to look at the impossible and ask, why not? He gazed out at the swirling quantum fields that now connected all of known space. We're not just reshaping the galaxy, Lyra. We're teaching it to reshape itself. And that's a power no weapon can match. In the distance, the twin purple suns of the Council worlds set on the old order, while quantum auroras danced across the sky, a visible reminder that in this new galaxy, the only true limit was imagination itself.